Hi, everyone. I'm Keren from Google. Let me just share my screen for 1 sec and we can start. Okay, so hi, everyone. I'm Keren and I'm here to talk about fintech trends that we've identified Google Search. I'm really happy to be here and thanks everyone for joining. Before I drill down into the presentation, I'd like to properly introduce myself. So I'm managing the fintech team at Google Tel Aviv, working closely with big financial advertisers on its Google Ads activity. We're partnering together with them to help them grow its user base. My team and I support different fintech companies from insurtech to online tradings, loans, and more. And we're working both with established companies and also a lot of work with startups. So let's start. As we all know, COVID has changed our world dramatically. We are traveling less, staying more at home, and sometimes very limited with what we can do. But zooming out, it mostly accelerated trends that were already in evidence before the crisis. Research shows that we've experienced 10 years of change in just a few months, which is pretty remarkable. COVID accelerated consumers' digital adoption, like digital video streaming, e-commerce, and of course, collaboration tools like e-learnings. Consumers took advantage of the digital worlds in ways we never thought possible. And with this increase in digital adoption, consumer journey become more messier and complex. And a lot of the times, the consumer journey starts with Google search. One of the good ways to know what people are interested in is to analyze Google searches. It gives us an indication into customers' need and what they're mainly interested in. So when we look at the finance category, there are, of course, a variety of searches. You can see here just a glance, searches related to the stock market, to currency converters, IRS, insurance, etc. And one of the things that we like to do at Google is to analyze data. So we analyze these trends and gather some insight, and I'll be happy to share it with you. And from now on, when I'll be talking about the finance category, this is the kind of the type of searches that you should have in mind. People are looking for their financial service providers more than ever. You can see at the graph here the year-to-date search volume growth for the finance category at US, growing 35%. The finance service industry has seen one of the fastest and sustained search growth since the beginning of February. And if you think about it, COVID is also about preparing for financial risk as you prepare for health risk. When we compare the finance vertical to other verticals and look at the search growth, you can see here, for example, fitness, pharmacy, beauty, real estate, etc. You can see that the finance category grew significantly more than others. We also looked at some of the search attributes. Attribute is what we call common phrases that repeats in different searches. In this example, we analyze searches that has the word from the finance category that contains the word best. So, for example, best saving account, best cat insurance, best mortgage rates. And you can see here that there was an increase in these searches when the pandemic starts. And when you think about it, it makes a lot of sense. In uncertainty of your financial state, people are worried and very stressed about it. And when you're in this state, you will be looking for the best deals out there where you can save money. And in this situation, every dollar counts. Another view, we also take a look at searches that contains contact number, phone numbers, email, etc. And we notice that it also increased significantly. Searches such as Geico phone number, USA phone number, etc. And it also makes a lot of sense as we are not, today we prefer not to walk into a specific business. If you used to go to a bank, now we prefer to communicate in other ways, such as calling them or emailing them. And of course, that searches with near me decrease significantly. We have lockdown sometimes. We are very limited with traveling. So we can see the significant decrease still remains very low and search volume remains very low. Another view that we took is we try to take all these searches within the finance category and divide it into separate categories. So we identified 3 trends that I'd like to elaborate on. The first one is shock. is when you see a significant increase in query and then a decrease. It's more of a short term, and you can see the graph looks as the green circle. The second trend that we identify is what we call the U-shape, when the queries is pretty much stable and then there is a decrease like a belly and it goes back to normal. And the last one is what we call the step change. It's increasing query that remains significantly high, and it still remains high even now after a month from the pandemic starts. So it's from the short term trend like shock up and down very quickly, and until the step change that it's more here for the long term. And now I'd like to give a few examples to what we were looking at. So the first one is sudden change in users' behavior, what we call the shock. You can see it, for example, with financial health searches or small business relief. People were very stressed and worried when, at the beginning of March, when the pandemic started. There was a lot of uncertainty, and there was a lot of searches around financial services state, how to improve my financial state, financial assistance, small businesses relief. Queries such as home refinancing or mortgage relief or business loans. This, you can see the percentage here. Home refinancing grew almost 200%, mortgage relief 414, and business loan 111. And on the one side, we have consumers' demand that increase, and from the other side, there are companies that identify this and launch new lending products. So there are few fintech companies that established fintech companies that launch lending products to capitalize consumer interest. Few examples here is Square, PayPal, and Grab. The second category that we refer to as the U-shape, which is more a recovery state. So we identified it in two different searches. One is the auto insurance, and the second one is credit card. You can see that it's pretty much stable before March, and then there is this little belly during March, and it goes back. And I'd like to talk about it a little bit. So let's start with the auto insurance. We take a look at the auto insurance searches for the past 3 years. When I say auto insurance searches, it can be searches such as cheap auto insurance, best auto insurance, how to buy my auto insurance, I want to switch auto insurance, and more. And you can see here that for 2018 and 19, there was no change in searches volume during March, which makes us understand that this is an abnormal in 2020, and this belly is not due to seasonality. And then we try to understand what caused this belly. So to do that, let's think about the auto industry. So this is how our life looks like. And not so long ago, we used to commute to work and commute back home, and we have a lot of arrangements to do, and we travel freely and we drive a lot. But in April, this is pretty much how our lives look like. We're hardly driving. There was minus 40% driving in 1 month. There were two big changes in regard to COVID at the auto industry. So the first one is that people are driving less, and it's for the first time ever. And the second one is that people are shopping for auto insurance. 51 million Americans switched insurance in Q2 and Q3. And there is 2x increase in propensity to shop or switch, and this is from June. So you can see that users actively looking to find the best deals out there. Google search interest in telematics terms gaining momentum. There are two super interesting companies in this field. One is Root, which is behavior-based pricing, and the second one is MetroMile, which is per mile. And if we look at the search query for these brands, in addition to generic terms in telematics, you can see significant increase when the pandemic starts, and it's still rising. And this indicates that this momentum is here to stay, and people are looking for ways to save money with their auto insurance and use more and more telematics. So zooming out from the auto insurance, we also take a look at different insurance vertical, and we wanted to know how it looks like in terms of search volume. So you can see here pet insurance, travel insurance, home insurance, life, and auto. And it's pretty much the same trend, the decrease in March, and then it goes back to normal. And the one insurance that hasn't recovered yet, it's the travel insurance. You can see the significant spike before the pandemic when I assume that people that were that traveled look for travel insurance. There were a lot of health constraints, and you can see that the decrease is still very low. And again, it totally makes sense. We are not travel freely as before. We are still very limited, unfortunately. I'd like to move on to the step change that we talked about, and from in my opinion, this is the most interesting one because it identifies on a trend that's going to stay with us. So we identified it in two different areas. One is with the contactless payments, and the second one is with day trading, and I elaborate on each one. So contactless payment, you can see this really nice increase in March, super high search volume, and then it decreased. But even though it goes down, it's still significantly higher than the beginning of the year. People are using less cash and more contactless. Is this trend here to change? We take a look at the query volume for contactless versus ATM. So you can see the ATM graph in purple and the contactless at blue. And there is this overlap in March. But I think that the most interesting part is that the contactless phrases increased significantly during when the pandemic starts. The fact that the ATM searches go down makes a lot of sense, but the fact that the contactless increased so significantly, it's pretty impressive. And you know, on a personal note, I will also prefer to pay over the phone or pay in contactless apps versus give to someone cash or my personal credit card. So the shift to contactless digital payments has been definitely accelerated. The Wall Street Journal published at August that Visa and MasterCard reported 40% year-over-year global growth for tap-to-pay or contactless transactions. And there is a lot of articles talking about that contactless payments are going mainstream and it's here to stay. Another interesting view is CB Insights take a look at earning calls that mentions that include digital payments and contactless. And you can see the purple line that refer to contactless source increased significantly in 2020. I'd like to move on to the day trading category. So in this graph, sorry. In this graph, you can see the day trading volume from the beginning of 2020 until today. And you can see the significant increase at about March, and then it keeps increasing, and there is little spikes. But again, the volumes remain significantly higher than the beginning of the year. But I think that one of the most interesting effects about it is when you zoom out and take a look at the past decade. This is from 2010 to 2020, and you can see that we've never had such a high interest in day trading and the stock market. So users, it seems that users that didn't trade before start becoming much and more interested in this field, referring to searches such as stock market, trading platform, buy stocks, how to trade share, Bitcoin, etc. And if you read articles or read financial reports of these companies that offer to trade online trading, they report a significant increase in its user base. You know, with the market volatility for the past few months, a lot of people identify an opportunity to trade and got really interested in this super amazing / challenging / exciting world of online trading. And we definitely see it reflect in Google searches. So besides the increase in generic terms such as buy shares or buy stocks, we also see increase in specific share prices for specific companies. This is also a trend that we usually see at Google. So you can see here, for example, the share price query volume for American Airlines share price. Sorry, not share price, the American Airlines share price query volume, and you can see that it increased during June when they published good results. You can see here what happened to the Zoom share price. As Forbes stated, Zoom stock skyrockets over 40% after a blowout quarter, and it expects to keep rising. So you also can see these spikes in Google Trends. And the last one is just from recent, is from Pfizer, that you can see the volume here for Pfizer share price. And you can see the huge spike at November. And as The Guardian said best, hopes rise for end of pandemic as Pfizer says vaccine is 90% effective, which is like super happy announcement. One thing we did is we also take a look at YouTube searches when what users are looking for at the YouTube platform. And we take a look at the first week of the year, and then at the last week of March, we try to figure out what changed there. And you can see that before the pandemic, there were searches such as why is college so expensive, how to raise your credit score, how to sell a house, how to increase your credit score. So this was the searches that users were looking within the finance category at YouTube before COVID. And as COVID started, you can see the searches that they refer to: how to trade options, how to day trade for beginners, how to invest in the stock market, what to invest in. So it's pretty much reflects not only in Google search, but also at YouTube. People identify there might be here an opportunity, and they want to learn more and explore this topic. I'd like to zoom out from the trends, from the category trends that we talked about, and move on to digital transformation, a high-level view. So another thing we noticed is that consumers show high interest for mobile apps. Searches for apps in the finance category grew significantly. You can see just an example of few apps and the search volume for it. So Cash App 75% year over year, PayPal 98% year over year. We also take a look at Google Play Store, and there was a surge in searches for the major banking and investing app. And again, it's not surprisingly, as people who used to take a little walk to the bank and meet people in person, and now using the app to do all kinds of different services, and the banks give really good solutions for that. Another interesting insight is the opportunity among the old demographics. So the percentage of adults aged 60 plus using online technology tools in the past 2 weeks, in the past weeks really increased. CB Insight survey, and it reports that 77% answers that they pay bills or made financial transactions online, which is a very high number for this audience. So if you have a product and before you target only the young audience, and you think that your product might be relevant also for the older audience, but you have some concerns about the digital adoption, I think it's a good time to reconsider it. So to wrap up, Google search is a great indicator to users' top of mind. We have this tool, external tool that's called Google Trends. I highly recommend you to log in and try to see what's the recent trends and look for specific searches and how it looks like and what users are looking for. It's external and it's open for everybody, so everyone can explore. The second thing we talked is how the finance category grew significantly during 2020, and we gave some example for trends that we believe that might be more sustainable than others, such as contactless payments. And the last thing is that consumers show high interest for mobile apps that we just talked about. Thank you very much for having me. Thanks for listening. This is my email, so if anyone wants to connect or reach out, please feel free to email me. Thank you very much. Bye.